What I'd like to do before we start to go into the panel, and we will have a little conversation first and then open it up for questions. But I said before the break that if any of you had questions for Tony coming out of the lecture, I would put aside some time, a few minutes for you to ask. So I'm just wondering if there was anything that came out of Tony's talk that you would like to follow up on, or any questions on that early period of Chinese independent cinema, which, as you heard, Tony dated back as early as 87, 88, and then followed through to the clampdown in 1995, which put a bit of a freeze on things for a couple of years before DV started to really change everything. So any questions or any comments for Tony? There's one back there. Do we have anyone to take a microphone? I'll do it.
And that was a very engaging talk just now, and I think we learned a lot. So I suppose it's just a very quick question. What we say is the main difference between the first phase and the second phase in terms of content, form, technology?
Yes, we're there. Thank you, Chris. Magic touch did the trick.
Speaking to the...
Yes, okay. I'm supposed to get close to it. Technology, obviously, yes. At the beginning, most of the things that I showed you earlier were shot on film. In most cases, 35mm film. Because that was the standard thing to do. And even if people had no expectation that their work could be shown in cinemas in China, it was routine to make things on 35mm film. By the end of the 90s, digital video was becoming widespread and common. Jia Ke started making films on film. His first 3 features were shot on film. By the 4th feature in 2004, he switched to digital video. Been working on it ever since. So that's somehow symbolic of the shift. But Jia Ke, by 1998, when he made, or 97 actually, when he made his first feature, was a bit of a throwback. I mean, he was clinging to film for nostalgic reasons, I think. But other people who were inspired by him very frequently started working on video from the beginning. So there was a big technological shift. It was that they were in the forefront of the shift. And the Film Bureau was very obliging at the outset by announcing that it didn't think that video was under its remit. So it wasn't going to try and control video production. It was not part of what it was told to do by the government. That was a position, of course, that they revised very quickly, but at the beginning it allowed certain independent filmmaking on digital formats to exist unchallenged. In content-wise, I think the first generation, the people whose work I looked at today, were strongly marked by Tiananmen Square. And just as the Cultural Revolution had very strongly marked the so-called 5th generation, and all of the main 5th generation films of the mid-80s were films that were, never directly, of course, but in most cases obliquely about the experience of the Cultural Revolution. They were designed to process feelings about what had happened during the Cultural Revolution. And I think that that is the defining characteristic, in fact, of 5th generation cinema. Similarly, for these younger people in the early 90s, Tiananmen Square was the defining event. And most of their work, directly or indirectly, obliquely or not so obliquely, has to deal with that. By the time we come to the late 90s, that's receded a bit, and I don't think that's anymore the defining impulse, the primary impulse behind the independent film. So that's the other shift, I think.
Any other questions, Tony? Yes, please.
Thank you for the talk. I'm curious that, so after the Tiananmen Square, that is there I mean, there's a lot of repression for expressions and, you know, the censoring, all that. Is there any directors or filmmakers who sort of exile outside of China and sort of made film or like community outside of, like, you know, China's? Like, if there's activity, I would like to know. What's up?
Not to my knowledge. The independent filmmaking didn't, as I said, apart from Wu Wenguang's documentary, independent filmmaking didn't really start until after Tiananmen Square, and the filmmakers were, on the whole, defiant. I think Zhang Yuan was probably the cheekiest in terms of his response to official censure and criticism. When the authorities finally noticed what he was doing, took steps to blacklist him, his response was very defiant. It's cheeky, I think would be the word. He first made the Tiananmen Square documentary about the square itself. Then he made things like the video I finished with just now, and he went on making, you know, films that were, at the very least, disrespectful of the authorities. So I don't think they were cowed by that. I'm not aware of anybody who was silenced. I mean, I suggested at the beginning of the talk that Wang Xiaoshuai was not one of the most courageous figures in the movement. He was, I think, in some ways very brave, but in other ways not so brave. And his second feature, which is a film called Frozen, he decided he better not put his name on it because he'd been blacklisted too, and he thought it would be asking for trouble to put his name on a film and invite more censure from the Film Bureau. So his second film, he just put the credit as Wu Ming, no name. So it's a film officially directed by Wu Ming, and he didn't do public appearances in support of it at the time it was made. But it took him like 3 years to finish it because of his hesitation about making another independent film. And that's probably the worst case of a filmmaker who was somehow inhibited by the authorities' actions. But I don't think anybody was really shut up by them. No. People were, again, I tried to suggest at the beginning, I think the Cultural Revolution, although it was quite a long time back by then, taught people you don't have to be respectful or deferential to authority. You know, so people had gotten, in the back of their heads at least, they had the idea that it's okay to rebel, it's okay to disobey, to not do what they tell you to do. And I mean, I think it still exists now, actually. I think people still think like that, young people in China, to a large extent.
I think the other important factor is that, of course, at that time, it also wasn't so easy to exit China. And in the wake of Tiananmen, many of us at that time were involved in trying to help people, and that was difficult at both on two sides. On the one hand, it wasn't necessarily that easy to get an exit visa, which you needed to have, and then it wasn't that easy necessarily to get an entry visa into another country, not least because other governments were thinking at that time that if people came to England or wherever it was, they were most likely not going to go back. Possibly for good reason, and that they had to think about that very carefully. So I don't remember actually, I think going along with what Tony's saying, I don't remember a lot of filmmakers thinking it would be possible for them to make films elsewhere, but of course, as we know, poets and authors and other people did, yeah, but it was difficult to get them out. Actually, this is already beginning to, in the discussion of a first and a second phase and so on, opening up the fact that what independent film means and what it is has changed a lot in China. And I think in the talk that Tony gave, you saw very clearly independent film in this early period being defined as something about stepping outside or being different from or resisting the state and state-owned studios and state authorities and so on. But last night we had a very interesting program of animation films, and it's quite clear that the state is really not the issue there at all today with these animation films. And that during the discussion after that, we heard they are independent animation films. And I asked, in what sense are they independent? What does it mean to say they're independent if there is no particular government organization that feels it has a job to, censor those or take control of them or whatever? And the answer was very much that their independence was really in the sense that they were not part, they were separate from that process of manufacturing and making, subcontracting animation production for large foreign companies or large television stations and so on. But it was part of making animation films as independent art films. So it was a different kind of definition. And so really the first question that I would like to direct to the panel, I'm not asking everybody to answer, but just I'm wondering who would like to answer, is what does it mean to talk about independent cinema in China today? What independent from what? How has it changed, and what does it mean to be independent in China today? Who would like to have a go at that?
就是关于这个独立，就是这个概念，我们就是 CIFF 内部也有过探讨。那么就是我在差不多第四届 CIFF 时候写过一篇我们图册的文章，在我们图册里面一篇文章，我写过这么一段话，就是大概意思是，中国的独立电影，它和世界电影史上这个独立电影的这个概念是有一点不一样的。从一个基本的表现形式上来看，中国的独立电影就是第一，就是它的剧本是独立创作的，它不是受某些官方意识形态控制的，它是一个作者完整的自由观念的表达。第二个，从中国独立电影它的制作它的制片的方式，它是独立的，它的这个钱，它的资金是独立的导演和独立的制片人他们自己筹集的，他们没有受到过国家和官方的任何的财政上的帮助和支持。这个就是从他的这个制片的这个方向上来说。那么还有一个我觉得最重要的其实还是它体现了还有第三个那个是他的这个制作班底的这个就是制片的这个团队的组建，它也是一个独立的团队，就是它可能是来自于各种不同领域的，可能它的这个非电影专业性就比一般的商业电影要更明显一点。那么这些都是中国独立电影的一些表面的一些，就是我们可以看见的一些情况。那么从最根本上来说，就是从它的这个核心价值上来说，它是追求一贯的这个中国传统文人的，从这个魏晋南北朝时期流传下来的这种追求独立、崇尚自由的这种文人士大夫的这种这样的一种精神理念。
Actually, Cao Kai mentioned there are a lot of discussions within CIFF China Independent Film Festival what independent film means. So he wrote an article in the catalog for the 4th festival that he basically discussed the independence of Chinese independent films into two basic categories. The first one is on its forms or on its appearance. First of all, the script where were created very independently. It is a complete expression of the writer's own thoughts. So, and also then the other one is that in the way it is made, it is all, and in the production, it is independently fundraising. So there is no state control or any state support for the production, like financial side. And then in its crew, like when they organize their crew, in a lot of times these independent films crew are non-professionals, and comparing to the commercial filmmaking, that feature is quite obvious in independent films. And then those are in the forms or in the way it is produced. And I think fundamentally the core value of independent films actually follows the traditional Chinese elite pursuit for a pursuit of freedom of speech, of a kind of free spirit that's passed down from maybe the 4th or 5th century in China. So it is, in that way, it is very much traditional Chinese tradition for elites or intellectuals to express themselves very freely. So that's what he thinks those independent means.
Xiaomin, do you want to add anything?
I would say it's so subjective, meaning that everyone could define independence by himself. For example, it's not really totally to me to get a clear concept of how a film could be independent or not. It's not either the power of any power to define if an artist is free or not, or he is independent or not. I would like to say that each filmmaker who would like to call his film as independent film, I could consider it. And later, perhaps, I will say, oh, it's not so independent. Or, it's very typical of today's independent cinema. But I think it's really subjective because, as I said the other day, that independence it's not anymore a macro concept on the difference of nations, because it was the meaning of independence at colonial time, when USA tried to be detached from England. But by now, I think it's totally we have the cinema of authors theory since already 60 years. A movie could be independent from the other movie just because it is totally different from the other movie, and I think everyone have right to say he's making an independent movie. And Chinese cinema today is just in this case, for example, a distribution, any distributor, producer, director, or even government people, including the censors themselves, professors. So if Jia Zhangke is saying a few times that his cinema is still independent cinema, I totally agree. But it's not necessary to Jia Zhangke to insist on this affirmation. But on the other side, one of the other opposites is Diao Yinan, who made Thin Ice Black Hole. He had been so upset by the distribution policies. It's not only policies, it's slogans by the distributors. That he had all his interviews saying that it's an independent movie. I think filmmakers have right to say he's making independent cinema or not.
Can I just clarify? So with Diao Yinan's film, Black Coal, Thin Ice, is the film that just won Berlin a few months ago, the Golden Bear at Berlin. And so if I can just check, so Diao Yinan wants very much to insist that his film is independent. Okay, so this is, just to clarify for everybody in the audience, this is part, I think, of the debate about how independent has and has not changed. And yes, I want to ask Pema in a moment. Because at one stage in the so-called independent film movement, some of the people involved with that would insist very strictly that if the film has been sent for censorship, and if it has gone through and has got a so-called dragon seal on the front of it, that means it's not an independent film. And I think that's what's changed, as you've heard both in Jiang Xianmin's response, Cao Kai's response, and also the fact that Diao Yinan himself, his film has gone through all those things. It has got a dragon seal, it's been approved, it's been released in China, but he wants to insist it's still an independent film. So clearly for many directors, independence is not so much defined anymore just by this issue of the censor, but it also involves independence of spirit, independence of funding, etc., etc. And on that note, maybe it would be a good moment to ask Pema, because his films all have dragon seals. So I'm kind of wondering what he feels about this issue of independence and whether he sees his film as independent or not, and why he would, in what way he would see them as independent.
Can I ask one quick clarification as well, just very briefly picking up on what you said before Pema speaks. I heard that Diao Yinan's film has been quite successful on release in China since Berlin, since its prize in Berlin.
Yeah.
Is that true, in fact?
Yeah.
As far as I read the news, that I think it's over 1,000 million or 100 million in box office income from China. Yeah.
Yeah. So just while this is being translated for Pema, the film was released. It was very successful, my understanding as well. And my understanding among some of the people I spoke to, who are some people who are involved in production, is that they got very excited about this because they think that after a long history, the last 15, 20 years in China, there's either been blockbusters, the action films, or this independent sector operating in a non-commercial way, and almost nothing in the middle. And so some people are extremely excited and thinking that perhaps Black Coal, Thin Ice is going to open up a sector of the market for these kind of more independent spirit, art house style films in China, but we don't know that yet, of course. But anyway, back to the question I was asking Pema.
对，就是可能对独立电影这个概念，国外跟国内有一些理解上的不同吧。继续说，然后可能我的电影就是属于就曹凯老师说的那个第一种，它可能具有一种独立的精神在里面，想完成一个独立的表达，虽然是通过审查的。
So Pema's idea is that it believes there's a difference between what is believed as independent film in China and overseas or outside China. As Cao Kai just mentioned, especially now, the independence more means actually more defined by its independent spirit. Like it's a freedom of speech. instead of whether it passes censorship or not.
所以我的第一个电影《静静的马尼是含有这个寻找直美根灯，在纯青的独立影展放的时候，它是在一个就是特别的单元叫轮标单元，就是带轮标的好电影这样一个单元放的。
So Pamela's first two films, first one, Silent Holy Stones and The Search, when they were screened in some independent film festivals, it was actually in a very special strand called the Dragon Seal strand, which is the independent films which already passed the censorship.
然后，对，就是我觉得对于独立电影这个概念，也不能以就是有没有拿到轮标这样一个标准来衡量吧。就像张新明老师说的，可能现在有很多就是之前的独立电影导演，他也尝试着拿到轮标，然后通过这样一个机制来完成自己的表达。
So Pamela basically very much agrees with what Professor Zhang Xinming just mentioned. It is more on an independent spirit, and so many filmmakers are, after they gained the Dragon Seal, the permission, they will still try to seek their own way of expressing themselves.
像我的话，因为就是我所涉及的这个题材的一些敏感性，然后我自己的身份，所以我是首先是希望在这样一个就是许可的范围之内，然后有一个独立的表达。
And especially for Pamela, because of his subject and the sensitivity of his subject, that he wants to continue to express himself within the range of permission.
然后其他的独立导演可能就是我觉得他们希望在这样一个就是带到轮标这样一个拿到轮标之后进行创作这样一个氛围之内创作，我觉得可能跟当前的这个中国独立电影的现状也有关系吧。可能跟80年代或者90年代的创作相比的话，现在的创作可能更艰难。更艰难。
So like nowadays, many independent filmmakers will try to work under this cover umbrella of the Dragon Seal, and I think so, of course it's back in 1980s and 1990s. Independent filmmakings are harder in China.
Okay, so I think probably at this point we've confused you completely about what independent film is in China. But I think the point, to try to be serious for a moment, the point is this diversification of opinions and ideas about it, and this open debate now. And you still will run into some people in the independent scene in China who insist very strongly that if it's gone, if it's in any way gone through censorship, it's had any kind of official support, it's not independent. So you get these very varying opinions. The other thing that has changed enormously is, as Tony was already indicating, the amount of films being produced is huge compared to the 1990s. Because of digital technology, it makes it much easier for people to make films. And the range, so that we have not only independent features, we have a huge number of independent documentaries, independent animation films, films made for the gallery by artists, which in a way are another kind of independent cinema, and so on. So I think the next thing that I would like to ask the members of the panel to comment on is, is this because I hear sometimes that this is a time of crisis for independent film in China. Crisis, what crisis? Is there a crisis? In what sectors of the independent industry is there a crisis, and why? Or do you think it's actually a good time for independent cinema in China? I'm just curious to hear people's reaction to that.
There are several questions in it. Generally speaking, I think the digital audiovisual production or distribution or kind of promotion visibility problem is had been globalized. It's not, there's things specific to China, but not always. So one of the key questions is still about the philosophy or aesthetic, in meaning that we have so many videos, short videos posted on YouTube, and we have even very conservative major festivals receive about, I would say, 4 or 5 times more feature fictions than 10 years ago as submissions. So if there are so many movies, I would say the first question is the float of works.
So sort of similar
is,
problems.
Yes. How can I say? Does it harm the creativity, or do we still have some creativity hidden somewhere? Or it's the opposite, it already killed this creativity. But there is also another question is, do we really need this creativity? Perhaps we needed creativity 40 years ago or 60 years ago, when, for example, people try to give up the concept of author cinema. But by today, perhaps creativity is somewhere else, and we do not need any more creativity in cinema. I don't know. The problem is my elders, like Zheng Dongtian, asked me these questions about 10 years ago, considering me as a kind of beginning digital aesthetic cinema in China expert. I didn't have an answer to it, but very, I would say it's more problematic today because I still do not have answer to it. I don't know how about other people, for example, for Chris or some other researchers or some filmmakers. For example, Jia Zhangke made his first feature movie in 16 millimeters, the second one in 35. And afterwards, till today, since more than 10 years, he only filmed in digital. So I think that's a key question to us today, and it's not a question specific only to Chinese digital cinema. I have some. I'm developing personally some very complex concept on it. It's too complex. I still need some years to finish about it. Yeah, what's digital image and what is a specific, what could be specific in the philosophy of digital moving image making and distribution and visibility.
Please, can we get a question, Debbie? Just get a microphone coming. We'll gradually begin to open it up to you now.
Would a subject like Critic of Buddhism can be accepted as independent filmmaking as a subject?
When you say critic, do you mean?
I can elaborate. Critic of Buddhism. Like what we see in Burma, the Buddhism tortures, or
okay.
Similarly in Sri Lanka, Buddhism is going in a very different direction. So it would be kind of making an independent film on a subject like that. Would that be considered as an independent cinema or not? Because that way one could talk more about some other country and bring the issue of independence.
Well, it would only happen in independent circles because the government would never sanction such a film, I don't think. The Film Bureau never say yes to such a project if it were formally presented to it. But we have on the panel Jiang Xianmin, who has produced 2 films at least, maybe more, by China's leading Christian filmmaker, Gan Xiao'er, who is also from some kind of persecuted minority in some sense. I mean, the Christian minority in China is not exactly persecuted in quite the same way that Buddhists in Burma have been, but nonetheless, they don't have an easy time of it always, and the films that Gan Xiao'er has made reflect that to a certain degree. So I think we should ask Jiang Xianmin what he thinks about Gan Xiao'er and Christianity.
Religion's always a tricky topic. Passing the buck.
以批判佛教为主题的这样一部影片的话，您会不会认为这会是一部独立电影？他也可能认为不是在批判佛教。对，就是关于佛教的这样一个态度吧。佛教是不是走上了等等这些东西的话，以及是否你一定要通过这样的东西来展现一个独立历史？
这个就是我目前了解的影片里面没有，可能还没有关就是批判佛教的这样一些电影。我的电影跟佛教有关系，但是跟就是刚刚您提的那种跟批判佛教的这类电影可能有很大的差别。
As far as Pamela knows, there hasn't been any film on the subject of critique on Buddhism. So although Pamela's film has a lot of references to Buddhism, but it's very different from the kind of subject you were talking about.
我拍的都是些就是藏区的现实的电影。之所以我的电影里面带有这个很多佛教的因素，是因为佛教是就是藏族人生活的一部分。
Pamela's film is more on just the reality of Tibetan life. The reason why you see so many elements of Buddhism in his films is because Buddhism is a very integral part of Tibetan people's lives.
那就比如我的第二部电影《寻找智美根灯》，它也会探讨一个佛教的基本的精神，通过智美根灯这样一个人物，然后会探讨施舍，然后施舍就比如说一些最基本的一些佛教的理念，但是可能只是一个思考，不会达到那个批判的层面。
So, for example, in his film that's going to be shown tonight, The Search, it is very much related to the Tibetan opera of Drame Dungan. So, Drame Dungan, and then the key message of Drame Dungan is the Buddhist idea of charity, being charitable. So, although this idea is explored in the film, but that's not the main theme. And so he wouldn't say it's a very deep discussion about Buddhist ideas.
但是在藏区，就是年轻一代的知识分子里面，有一些人他会通过文字、通过文章，然后会对佛教或者一些传统的东西进行批判。
But in Tibet, there are some young intellectuals. They will maybe have some criticism on Buddhism, on writings, on articles.
然后这个在整个藏区会引起很大的争议，但是我觉得它是具有这种独立的精神的。
So these articles or these topics will be extremely controversial in Tibet, but Pema believes they are valuable and they do have the independent spirit.
它不是一种盲目的一种批判，我觉得它是一种理性的批判。
So he thinks those critiques are not like just a bit kind of reasonless, but they are quite thoughtful and it's a more constructive criticism.
甚至形成了一种怎么说呢？一种有点像启蒙运动的这样一个现象。然后通过这样一批人，这样一批年轻人的他们的思想、他们的文章，然后很多藏族的老百姓，包括很多就是佛教徒，他也在进行反思。
So he thinks this discussion is in a way like the Enlightenment in Western history, because of this discussion and these thoughts, many Tibetan normal citizens and normal people and Buddhists, they have begun to reflect on all those Buddhist disciplines. So they are thinking about all the traditions they have been taken for granted.
但是在当下这样一个情况下，可能通过电影就是这样比较深入的探讨佛教，我觉得是不太可能的。
But in current context or the situation, Pema doesn't think it is very possible for a film to take that as a subject.
We have another question down here.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a question to any or all of the panelists about the relationship between contemporary literature and contemporary independent film. I mean, I know that there are film directors like Pema and like Zhu who started out as writers, but how much does independent film take inspiration from contemporary writing, and indeed does it work the other way around?
就是独立电影圈里面有很多这样的现象吧，比如说朱文，还有那个许昕也是，许昕作家许昕，他们都是非常优秀的作家。许昕，这个许昕不是那个许昕。我知道，
不会是那个许昕。So. As far as Pema is aware, there are quite a lot of connection between writers and independent filmmakers. For example, a famous Chinese writer, Xu Xian, his story got adapted into films.
朱文，还有李浑奇这些导演的。李浑奇、朱文。
李弘奇 and 朱文, I think probably you know me better than me.
对，然后。就是他们也是非常好的导演，他们也拍出了非常好的电影。
So those two are actually very good actors, and they make very good films.
我觉得可能他们的就是文学的表达跟电影的表达有一致的地方吧，就是他们的文学作品也有那种包含着那种独立的思考。
So Pema believes there is kind of a shared spirit between their literature and their film work. There are some independent thoughts in both genres.
他们的文学作品可能跟他们的电影也很接近。
So their literature is actually very close to the films.
但是我本人可能跟他们有点区别，就是我的文学作品可能跟电影相差很远。
But Pema, in that sense, is very different from them. His literature, his writings are very different from his films.
但是确实有那种就是内在的一致性吧。无论是电影
There
还是文学
are
作
some,
品。
of course, connections between the two, but yeah, I've heard. Well, his films are very different from his stories.
这一批导演可能跟就是单纯的从文学作品改编成剧本，然后再拍成电影的。这样一些导演可能不一样。
So it is not a simple adaptation from the writing, the literature into films. There are quite a lot of changes between this transforming process.
Up here, please.
I would like to ask actually the funding process for independent filmmakers, because a lot of issues, for example, Zazanke's film is dealing with probably the state wouldn't be happy about. And I've seen some of his film, for example, The World was funded partially by the Dentsu, which is a Japanese advertisement production company, I think. And I think also his recent film, A Touch of Sin, was also I don't know, it's a funding, but the Kitano studio was involved. And so there's a sort of like, what is it, the global funding is sort of involved for independent film in China. And then, and also I was kind of curious that there's a crowdsourcing funding like Indiegogo or Kickstarters a lot in, like as far as I know in the States and other parts of the world is funded their independent film. And I'm wondering how much in China they were like funded for their production for your own film. So that's my question that I would like to ask all of you. Thank you.
Also, everyone find his own ways. Jia Zhangke is a favorite for some Japanese productions, especially Kitano Office. So almost all his movies are co-produced by Kitano Office. And also, Jia Zhangke had a good relationship with Shanghai Film Studio since Shanghai Film Group since 2003. Actually, for example, we try to separate or to make clear the difference between investment and funding sponsor. Most of those of the financial solutions of budget of a movie, including a big part of independent movie, is investment, and investment has always a commercial purpose. But you have to find your capitalist, someone interested in you. So there are a lot of different people, real estate promoter, coal mine owner, but also a different propaganda ministry bureau in different provinces, different cities who would like to try to make a new image of their own city. Or so, for example, even Thin Ice Black Coal, actually the main investment came from Xingfu Lanhai, which is a production 100% based on the money of Jiangsu province TV, radio, cinema group, which is run by government, but it's a firm created by the government. So I would say it's very complex. It's really very complex. The most easy way is if you make your movie with your own money. You paid your tax before it, and with your personal revenue, you make your movie. That's easier to be recognized as an independent film.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Probably the majority of independent filmmakers in China do not have access to funds outside China. They don't the films don't circulate in such a way that they can get money from outside China. And Xianmin was just telling us that for a lot of people, they use their own money to make their movies. Is that the majority of people doing that? Is that the most common way?
你觉得就是在那个 CIFF 看到的片当中，大概有多大的比例是自己投资做的？凯子，这个你能回答一下吗？
So passing the question on to Cao Kai and saying, of the films that were shown in the China Independent Film Festival, can Cao Kai estimate approximately what proportion are self-funded through the filmmaker's own funds?
放的片里面有多少是自己投资的？就自己用掏腰包的钱拍的，你大概估一下数，可以吗？
没有做过统计啊， 那个就是我知道的情况，大部分确实是自己投的钱吧。就是 CIFF 的片子，就是有好些人是就是自己的积蓄，像是那个王丽人，就是他拍一些商业片、拍广告，然后存了点钱，后来拍了他自己的那个独立电影。然后就是那个连像刘永红这样的就是著名的摄影师拍片，大概都要借那种抵押贷款，就是都就是钱基本上还是有的是朋友凑的，就是大概这个亲朋好友当中有的有钱人，然后就说这个给你一笔钱，你要做成功，就成功了。那个不成功，这个钱我也就算了，就给你了。那还有像是那个刘健这样的，做那个刺痛我，他有3年，因为那个动画片他一个人做了3年。就他没有工作，他太太其实也没有工作，他太太也是画点画的那种。那就是他一家3口的3年多的生活费，是靠他之前他参与了一个商业动画片，他做了一部帮别人做了一部商业动画片，赚了一笔钱，然后那一笔钱大概就是供了他那个3年的这个家庭的生活费。那么其实就是他，因为他那个动画是他一张一张画出来的，他的时间就是成本吧，这样大概是这样啊。那么那个3年他没法工作，就是他的成本是大概是这样的一个算法啊，大概这样吧，好吧。
Because from Cao Kai's answer, it's no data collection of whose film shown in CIFF were actually funded by themselves. But as far as he knows, like for example, one director called Wang Ren, he actually makes money from making commercials or commercial films to raise money, to save a little bit of money for his own independent filmmaking. And someone as famous as a very famous photographer called Liu Yonghong, he also has to just put something in mortgage to the bank to get some loan from the bank to make his own film. And in a lot of ways, these films are funded by personal network. Like their family, their friends, maybe someone has a little bit saving, then they're going to lend a bit money to the filmmaker. So if the film is successful, okay, everybody's happy. But if it's not, then if it's not, then they won't ask the money back. So then another one, like we mentioned last night, a feature animation film called Piercing Eye, made by the artist called Liu Jian. He spent 3 years just paint those animations one frame by another frame, and his wife doesn't have a job, so they lived 3 years on his saving made previously when he worked on a commercial animation. So because during those 3 years he could not do any other work, so that can be considered a kind of investment because he invested his own time, the whole family's time into that.
See, we have a question over here. Can I ask, is it a question about money? Okay, in that case, before you do, I'm always interested in money, so I have to ask a little bit of a follow-up, if I could, and then we'll go around. Oh, you have another question about money. Okay, there's lots of questions about money. Okay, well, maybe we should go down to the front and do that, and then we'll come to you. Okay. So could we maybe let this lady ask her money question, and then we'll come back up to you.
Well, actually, it was more a comment than a question, which is that as an independent filmmaker, meeting a lot of other independent filmmakers from all over the world, as you do when you kind of go to festivals and stuff, it seems that's one thing very much in common with independent filmmakers everywhere is, you know, I borrowed, begged, stole, went hungry, asked my grandmother. It seems to be because the desire to express or to do something is so strong that people will kind of do anything to do it. And that's, I think, is very inspiring that that's something universal, because before coming here I didn't really know that there was an independent Chinese cinema, because I'd never really thought about it, to be honest. And so to see that it's exactly the same there as everywhere else, I think it gives a great kind of sense of camaraderie about the, you know, the independent artist, that wherever you go, you're going to find somebody who's wanting to do that and will do anything. So that makes me feel very happy.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to ask my money question, then we'll come to you. Which is, one of the differences, you know, despite, I think I should take your point about how the difficulty, the similar circumstances in raising funds. But again, historically, one of the differences between the situation in China and in many other places is if you're not one of those dragon seal indies, which is the majority of people are not able to put their film through, what they can't do is release their film into the movie theaters. You can't release it into the movie theaters if you haven't put it through the censorship authorities. So one of the things we always used to hear from our Chinese friends who are independent filmmakers is the difficulty of getting the money back on, or making any money out of the film. So how do you sustain a career as a filmmaker if you can't make any money back on the films? My question is, has that changed? Are filmmakers now, do they have other ways inside China? I'm not talking about the ones who can export, but inside China, are there ways of getting funds, you know, from actually showing the films these days?
At my estimation, 80% of movies are losing money, and it's not specific to Chinese cinema, not specific to Chinese independent cinema. It's almost the same percentage for Hollywood blockbuster. 70 or 80% of their blockbuster are losing money.
No Hollywood blockbuster losing
money. Even yes, Hollywood. So
in the end, they all make their money back now.
Oh, in the end.
Because through all the ancillary sales, etc., none of them lose money anymore.
Yes, perhaps I'm old-fashioned movie theater.
The independent films around the world, same problem. I agree. But in China, are there? I mean, if you make you have helped to produce many independent films. The films that those films that cannot be shown in the regular movie theaters, is there any other way now for them to earn money in China?
I would say the production I made, I produced or co-produced about 15 feature fictions till now. I could sell abroad 25% of it. So the majority had no foreign
and inside
commercial
China?
distribution. We have small sales international. Almost all titles have small sales for international market, but no major distribution. For example, BBC or real theater release in London. No, it's very difficult. And for inside China, I would say half of it get internet distribution, which there is only 2 or 3 examples in my productions for which the internet distribution will really meaningful. Yes, with real amount of coming back, and TV release is very important. Theatrical release is almost impossible because of the huge fee of distribution. China is too big. Mm-hmm. It's too big. If you would like to release your movie in 20 cities, it's the double of your budget. If you make an independent, low-budget movie, you need twice of the budget of the production to have a national theater release. So we also try to create alternative of national distribution possibility, or not really national, I would say multi-provincial distribution system. Till now, those new distribution efforts have been also a financial failure. But I would like to think we will get first achievement in the coming 2 or 3 years to have a first alternative distribution which could be financially healthy.
Okay, so that's very, if I could just elaborate a bit on that for a moment, then we'll go over to the question here, so maybe a microphone could go there. That's very interesting because, first of all, I guess for this new distribution effort, those films are all ones that have to get a dragon seal, right? To be part of this, to be exhibited in the film theaters. 对不对？他们是要通过审查吗？就是说所有那个的 yeah, okay. But so that's one thing. But the other thing that's interesting, of course, which is very different from that first period that Tony was talking about in his lecture, is the two things. One, the internet, and secondly, television, right? So first of all, the internet didn't exist at that time. So the internet now is a source of revenue. And something which came out in yesterday's discussion, the ministries responsible for deciding what can be shown on the internet are not the same ones as the ministries that decide what can be shown in the movie theaters. So, and the ministry, by the way, the ministries that decide what can be released on DVD are not the same as the ministry that decides what can be shown in the movie theater. So your film can be banned from the movie theater or not sent to be censored for the movie theater, but still released on DVD or shown on the internet. And also, it can be shown on television. And the big change in this century with television in China is thanks to digital and thanks to satellite and so on. There are now hundreds and hundreds of channels, literally hundreds of channels in China, and they have to fill them up with something, right? So, your indie film has a chance of getting shown on television. Okay, so now finally, and thank you for your patience, the question over here.
That's all right. I think my question probably follows quite well your question is, so we mentioned that the availability of technology, the internet, etc., probably give a lot of opportunities for people. More and more people are making independent films. There's more channels to release them. And yet you talk about a crisis in independent film. And Pima just now specifically mentioned, if I understood it right, he was saying that actually the environment of making independent film is even harder now compared to the 80s. If so, why? Why is that? So, if I may sort of add a bit more specific question of this, so what are the topics being presented in the so-called second phase of independent film if the 1999 event is no longer the main reference point? What are the topics in the second phase? And more specifically, my visit to China shows that apart from political constraints, consumerism is the dominant force of restriction of freedom in China now. And I've seen very little reflexivity or critique of consumerism in China, at least in mainstream media or literature, etc. Do you see any of this kind of critique in independent film? Now I'm going to say it in Chinese.
Okay, so 3 different questions. Yeah. So we'll take them in turn. So maybe the first question. Yeah.
对我的问题就是，大概有3个问题，一个就是说，随着技术越来越便利啊，还有互联网的便利，我们看到的是，独立电影好像越来越多的人在做独立电影，而且有更多的渠道去展示他们。可是为什么有一个危机的存在？而且刚才平马导演刚才提到的是说，现在的这个环境实际上比80年代还要更艰难。如果是这样的话，为什么？第二个问题就是从第2波的这个独立电影这个浪潮来说，主要的题目是什么？如果89已经不是主要的影响他们的一个主题的话，那么大家在拍的这些主题是什么？还有第3个就是关于消费主义的，就是说现在在中国，在我看来，除了政治限制之外，消费主义是更强大的一股消灭自由思想的一股力量。那么在中国的独立电影的这个舞台上，是否有关于批判消费主义的这种声音？谢谢。
So maybe the first question we can deal with just what is the crisis? Why is it so difficult? Maybe Pema. 你说的你就得回答。
我就回答第1个问题吧。其实昨天在那个诺丁汉的时候，冯燕导演也提到过这个问题。确实跟80年代相比的话，那个独立电影的创作，因为那个数码或者 DV 的出现，可能更普及，更多的人拿起了 DV， 然后拍。表达自己。
There is because Pema just came from Nottingham yesterday. There was one of the topics he talked with the other independent documentary filmmaker Feng Yan about that. Although comparing to 1980s, the popularity of digital technology encouraged more people to make independent films.
然后就是跟90年代或者80年代比的话，可能。欧洲或者西方就是对中国独立电影的这种关注，可能没有之前要多吧。
However, comparing to the 1980s or 1990s, the kind of spotlight on independent Chinese cinema from Europe is lesser than the past.
然后。之前的话，可能很多电影节它有这种很多国家或者很多电影节它有这种资助或者支持独立电影的这样的基金，但是随着中国经济的发展，可能这种基金或者支持在减少。
So, like like maybe 20 years ago, there are a lot of funds from various international film festivals to fund independent Chinese filmmaking. However, with the development of China's economy, such fund is reducing.
然后另一个就是当下的一个处境，就是大家可能也知道，这2年就是南京独立影像展，还有北京的这个独立电影展，它都受到了一定的限制。
And another one is actually or film festivals. Maybe some of you knew, like CIFF and also Beijing Independent Film Festival has been very much restricted in the past few years.
跟几年前相比的话，就这种独立电影的这种展示的平台也越来越少。
Therefore, there are lesser channels for these films to be seen.
然后另一方面就是独立电影的制作，如果你想做的就是更加精良的话，它是需要一定的资金的保障的。但是，可能就是有这样的投入之后，可能就回收的这种渠道或者方法可能越来越少。
And on the other hand, to be able to produce a quality independent films, you need more funds to produce them, but with the reduced channel, there are lesser possibility for you to regain your investment.
国内的就是所谓的这些独立导演当中，除了贾樟柯等几位 导演的电影之外，很难在就是欧洲或者其他国家有这个发行和销售。
So from so many independent filmmakers in China, besides Jia Zhangke and very few other well-known filmmakers, it's very hard to distribute independent films in Europe or countries or outside China.
所以在独立电影的这个数量在不断增加的同时，我觉得从另一个方面讲的话，可能它的出境可能会更加艰难吧。
So Pamela's understanding is, although the quantity of or the numbers of independent films made in China are increasing, but its influence and also its survival are getting harder.
Okay, so that answers the question about the crisis. So the next question was about what are the main kinds of topics and the main kinds of films that are being made at the moment.
中国独立电影既然89已经不再是一个主要的议题的话，中国独立电影主要的议题是什么？话题。
Well, I think to answer your question, I think there has been some critiques of consumerism. I think there are quite a number of filmmakers who are very critical about materialism in present-day China, which obviously touches on consumerism as well, and have been rather sharp, I would even say, about denouncing the lack of any kind of spiritual dimension in many people's lives in present-day China. As Jiang Xianmin and Pema have both said, it's quite hard for independent films to have much impact in the present climate. I mean, we haven't really said this, but I think it should be said. In the last few years, there has been a crackdown. The authorities have cracked down on independent artists, not just filmmakers. In fact, probably filmmakers have been less affected than many other people. But nearly all the independent artists in Beijing found themselves thrown out of their warehouses. There's a documentary in this very festival on that subject. Artists have been, writers have been told not to publish various things. People have had their magazines and novels closed down or stopped in various ways. So the filmmakers have not been hit particularly hard, but there has been, in the last 3 years, a crackdown by the government on independent artists in many fields. And obviously it doesn't help. So most of the independent film festivals in China have been hit by this. Many of them were forced to close down or just not happen. And the major institution that helped a lot of independent filmmakers was Li Xianting's Film Fund, based at that time in Songzhuang, just outside Beijing, which was a kind of artist's colony itself. That's gone now, it's changed so much that it no longer has the same identity. But the Li Xianting's Film Fund also was not allowed to have its annual festival, everything was shut down, and its activities subsequently have been drastically curtailed. So, you know, this is not a good time. I mean, things are quite difficult now. And in this climate, I think it's very hard for any critic of the status quo, any critic of materialism or consumerism or anything else to have any very significant impact. But that's why filmmakers like Jia Zhangke and Diao Yinan and some others are trying to find ways to work within the mainstream but maintain a certain kind of independent spirit and to express certain critiques. I mean, I think that Touch of Sin is not primarily about consumerism, but it touches on consumerism and it addresses, you know, the gaping spiritual void that drives people in certain circumstances to become so mercenary and ultimately so violent. I think I wouldn't say it directly addresses your question, but I think it's certainly in the same arena. We're in the same area.
Maybe I could add a little more to the second question. So I think, you know, as Tony was just saying, right now, the possibility of getting a Dragon Seal and getting a release is obviously appealing to a lot of independent filmmakers. At the same time, it must be acknowledged that there's a very small number of filmmakers who wished very strongly to stick to making films that are the kinds of films that could never ever be really shown very easily. And an example of that would be the latest film by Huang Wei-kai, who won the award here last year for his film Disorder. Although it was made a few years ago, it was in the selection last year. And his latest film is very different from Disorder. Disorder, as those of you who saw it last year will remember, it's a sort of heavily montage-based kind of portrait of a dystopian portrait of urban life, and certainly a critique of materialism. But this latest film he's made, together with some other people whose names I actually won't even mention, he goes into the home of Wang Lixiong, who's a well-known intellectual in China who is very concerned about the situation with the ethnic minorities in China. And Wang Lixiong, I think a year or two ago, very daringly set up a Skype conversation with the Dalai Lama. And together with himself and one or two other people. And his wife is a Tibetan poet. Where she doesn't take part in the conversation, she's there in the background. Anyway, Huang Wei-kai's film simply documents this conversation, and that's all. But, you know, that is the sort of film, I mean, because of that film, he couldn't, although the film was shown in Hong Kong, he was denied permission to leave China to be there for the screening, etc., etc. So there are some filmmakers who, you know, stick to that commitment. In terms of topics, I guess if we go back earlier, you know, to say, talk about the last 10, 15 years, it's certainly true that for a long time, the reputation quite fairly was that both feature films and documentaries were focusing on people in the margins of society who were normally denied a voice or denied representation. And the other big change, I think, that happened around 10 years ago or so was another generation of very young, much younger filmmakers who wanted to make much more personal films that were not necessarily about you know, social issues, but were about their own lives. And of course there's a blur there. But someone like Wu Haohao, who you saw interviewing or failing to interview Ai Weiwei, if you came and saw that film a couple of days ago, would be somebody from that generation, and there are many others. But those are some of the major sort of topics and types of films I think that have happened in the last decade or decade and a half. I'm not sure if anyone wants to add any more. Or should we go to another question?
就是其实题材现在我觉得还是很宽泛，就是80年代当时电影就是关注历史比较多，其实这条线索在独立电影里也有，像胡杰的那个寻找林昭的灵魂啊，然后像那个王斌的何凤敏啊，然后像那个还补情妇以美丽，是那个云南的老先生叫什么名字？那个导演？补情妇。对，王云龙，对，王云龙。王云龙他原来就是一个文工团的一个这个演员，然后他拍他文革时候他的一个同事，然后一个女的舞蹈演员在文革中被迫害致死的。就这种影片，其实在后来独立电影里面也有，就是并没有说就是没有关注文革的影片，只是不像80年代那么那个时候那么成系统的，然后以一个整体的形象出现在观众面前。它那么再加上就是这类影片可能在中国可能国内确实比较少能看到。那么再加上就是中国独立电影的题材越来越宽泛， 就是从那个杜海滨、王斌他们这些独立电影，真正就是2000年前后的这一批独立电影导演，一开始，他们会关注一些就是边缘的人群，这个边缘包括生存状态的边缘和精神状态的边缘。你稍微翻译一点吧。
I translate. Actually, there's not really a concentration on the possible topics in Chinese independent cinema. It's almost the opposite. He will say that the independent cinema inside itself is becoming more and more diverse. For example, it's not only by today's situation or reality, it's also about our recent history, for example, Cultural Revolution. For example, there's almost the whole Hu Jie's filmography, including Looking for Lin Zhaosou, Through I'm Gone, etc. But also from other filmmakers, for example, Wang Yunlong, who tried to make a documentary recalling the death of a colleague, a female colleague, during Cultural Revolution. But surely, to talk about the society of consummation, surely this kind of work, serious work of memory or about history, perhaps are less systematic than in the 80s. Perhaps, we are not sure. But on the other side, the problem of visibility is another matter, in the meaning that it's very difficult to show independent cinema inside China. And those serious documentary or films, for example, by Wang Bin, He Fengming, its occasions are so rare to make those documentaries to meet the audience that perhaps actually people are right to think that in cinema there are almost only consummation products. 然后就我讲前一部后一部分，你是想讲那个王斌他们那个从一开始的边缘状态，后来怎么样了呀？
对，就是那些关注拍摄边缘人群吧，然后就是到后来就是题材越来越宽泛嘛，就是从拍边缘到开始进入这个普通人群，包括最后甚至于一些跟这个体制内的这个人也成为被拍摄的对象，比如像那个拍儿科病房的那个导演叫什么名字？那个
汪浩
啊，对对对，汪浩就拍过一个就是中国那个网络监控系统的这个内部的这样一个题材，这个是一般人很难拍到的，那确实是一个完全是一个深入到体制内部去拍摄的一个作品。那么还有像是郭熙志他拍官方电视台的内部。就是这个也是一般人就是很难被拍到的，那么它也成为独立电影的题材的一个部分。那么还有一些就是说作者他本身就是一个边缘人群，像是吴浩浩、薛建枪这样的哈，就是他们就是现在叫一个网络流行词叫做屌丝嘛。他们自己就是屌丝，然后那么他们又拍他们自己身边的人，就是这种屌丝拍屌丝，就是他们就是这个他们被拍摄者的一个组成部分。那么这个也是就是像一开始黄文海拍梦游什么，还是一个就是旁观者的姿态，在拍那些边缘的行为艺术家的生活。 那么等到就是薛建强、吴浩浩的时候，就是他们已经完全融为一个整体了，啊。好，先。
Marginal. People on the margins or marginal people.
So on the subject of independent films, actually, it is very, very wide. Although from at the start or in the past, a lot of these independent films focus on the marginalized populations or the marginalized part of the society. It's then shifting to like more ordinary people's lives, and also then even to those people what we call inside the system. Usually they're state-owned enterprises or various systems. For example, there is a very peculiar film by Wang Hao. It's made on the subject of internet supervision in those kind of official government system that they within that system. So this is a very rare film to get insight into Chinese state. And then there is another film by Guo Xizhi. He also made a film about the major Chinese broadcasting system. And then it went even further to like the filmmakers themselves are the marginalized population. For example, the films that we've shown here by two young directors, Wu Haohao and Xue Jinqiang, they film very much about themselves and the friends around them. They are a marginalized population, a young people in Chinese society. There's a very special term. I still have difficulty understanding it. 屌丝. This is a term that there are so many Chinese terms that seems to be invented. I still don't know what exactly.
Young loser.
Young losers. Okay, losers.
How do you translate that, 屌丝?
Young losers.
Yeah.
But so the.
Oh, I was definitely a loser.
Yes, exactly.
He presents himself at all times as a loser.
Well, if you have happened to see this film called criticizing Quen 13, criticizing Ai Weiwei and Wu Haohao, it's basically how Wu Haohao has failed to interview Ai Weiwei in that quite pathetic 40 minutes of time. So it is a big change from independent filmmaking. At first they were observe the marginalized group as someone outside the camera, and then now they become the subject themselves into the frame.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot more interaction as well, even if they themselves, it used to be that they felt they should just observe, and then more and more that became criticized, that, you should be, what help is it for those people for you to observe them? So then much more involvement now between the filmmakers and their subjects and so on. Okay, so we've been going for quite a long time. We're going to take one final question, and I think you had your hand up before, so I'm going to ask you to that last question. Sorry. There's a couple more, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but yeah.
Actually got a few questions.
One question. Pick your question.
Right.
I'm starting to get more ruthless, so just one question.
Right. Can I just add some comments on the previous topic? We're talking about the foundings and distribution of the Chinese independent films. I remember there's one interview with the producer of Diao Yunan's film, when Yan was talking about there's a core part missing in Chinese film industry, is that the production and proper distribution for this kind of non-commercial cinema. So I'm thinking, in our industry, we have quite a lot, quite professional and maybe pro-ams filmmakers, but what is really missing is the foundings and the distribution. So I was thinking, we were talking about differences between TV release, online distribution, and even DVD release. So is there a way of going back in fashion to do kind of finding a way of getting a profitable financial return in DVD release? Because is there any, well, because I was thinking, and also the film festivals.
China is very famous for DVD piracy, I think.
Well,
maybe things have changed, but I think DVD is probably one of the really hard ways to make money in China.
Or just combining with
I mean, a few years ago, one of China's film producers told me that his only answer with DVDs was, and in fact, with the piracy issue in general, was he sells the films that he produces to the pirates.
Right.
That's the only way he can make any money.
Okay.
But I don't know if anyone else
I actually know quite a lot of filmmakers, whenever they see pirate versions, they'll be very happy and they'll buy a few themselves, because that shows the films have become very popular to even gain the attention of pirate makers.
But anyway, yeah.
Right. What about the film? Who? You were talking about there were quite some film festivals for the CFF, and the Beijing ones were kind of just shut down or just, I mean, have to be shut down. What about some other film festivals, or even the Rare Window? They have 后窗放映. So, well, there is another alternative film release, but most of their films have passed the censorship or have passed the administration. Do you think that there can be a way of kind of having a chain artificial art house cinema across the whole country in bigger province? Do you think that can be a alternative solution for distribution?
曹凯，不好意思，曹凯你讲一下，就是南京影展和北京影展遇到的困难，就去年前年，好吧？然后我再来回答那个后窗放映的部分。
So it's going to be a division of work on the answer.
Yes.
就是那个北京独立影像展和南京的中国独立影像展，虽然就是一南一北，可能是中国两个规模最大的影展，但是还是有很大的不同的。那个北京独立影像展，它的那个就是它的立场一直相对比较激进一些。它和这个政府的这个就是对抗反抗也是更加直接。那么这个也是它一直以来这个坚持以纪录片为主要的这个为影展主体造成的一个必然的这样的结果。那么有一些，比如说是中国政府特别不喜欢的纪录片，要求他们不可以放映的，他们会坚持放映，那么这样就是造成了很大的一个正面冲突的这样的状况。那么这个状况已经有好几年，那么在2011年、2012年的时候，达到了一个比较激烈的地步。就是导致在2011年和2012年都明确跟他们就是要求他们不能够举行。那么他们其实后来举行的方法是以一个秘密放映就是不公开放映地点，每天轮换放映地点等等这样的方法。这样实施的，先这个翻译一下。
So, Cao Kai mentioned that the two biggest independent film festivals in China that are facing difficulties are the Beijing Independent Film Festival and CIFF in Nanjing. These are the two largest independent film festivals in China, and they are actually very different. The one in Beijing is usually the value or the standpoint of the organizers is usually much more controversial, or they tend to confront the government more directly. So as a result, most of the films they show are documentaries, and also there are quite a few documentaries that Chinese or the officials explicitly said that they didn't like it and they hope they can cancel it. Then the Beijing Independent Film Festival will still insist upon screening them. So these caused a lot of quite good direct confrontation between the festival and the official authority. So these situation lasts for quite a few years, especially in the year 2011 and 2012, these fractions become more drastic. Then the result is the authority would call off, or they would forbid the screening of the film festival. And the film festival's strategy was to show films secretly, and they would never release their like where they're going to show the films, and also they may change their venues every day. And actually, my own experiences, I contacted these film organizers myself. Then they kind of say, you know, we can never let you know when it's going to happen and where this is going to happen. You kind of just expect things will happen. And especially for me as an overseas attendant to these film festivals, I just have to try my luck. I would just go there and see if by any chance I can catch any film. If not, then I think people really understand that. 南京。
就是南京的情况呢是有一点不一样，就是南京它，我跟张宪民我们一开始举办这个活动的时候，就是我们是以剧情片的评选为主，然后当然就是纪录片和包括实验电影我们也都关注到，我们是一个更综合的一个这样的独立电影节。那么在这个和这个政府的和政府这个方面呢，我们也姿态更加温和，就是我们没有和政府在就是前面的2012年以前，我们从来没有和政府有过任何冲突，我们也没有得到过任何就是有关方面要求我们不能放这个电影或者不能放那个电影等等，我们也没有接到过这样的这个明确的表示，从来也没有过。那么一直这可能跟南京这个地方也跟北京不一样吧，就是它离北京的政治权力中心比较远一点，它也相对平静一点。那么但是这并不表明就是说，因为我们以一个比较温和的姿态，然后我们就不会受到中国这个目前这种政治环境的影响。有一句话成语我不知道怎么翻译哈，我给你出个难题，叫这个覆巢之下安有完卵，啊，这个就是那个一个鸡窝被打碎了，那每一个鸡蛋都不可能是完整的。那么在这个2012年。当时这个中国政治的这个一个变化的急剧变化的时候，在上面的这个政策收紧的时候，把对独立电影控制的底线往上提升的时候，那么大家都是一样的，都就是南京也遭到了被停止举办的这样的命运，那所以就是说，我觉得就是南京和北京，因为我们其实是BIFF 和 CIFF 他们其实从基本价值观，包括他的这个对待独立电影的基本立场其实是一致的，只是对待某种这个表达的方法有一点不一样，仅此而已吧。但是最后他们在中国的政治现实面前，他们得到的结果是一样的。
Well, CIFF in Nanjing, from the founding of the festival, they have decided they want to focus more on the screening of fiction films, although they also cover documentary film and experimental film. The festival itself is much more comprehensive and have a wider range. And also they're dealing with the government and the kind of negotiation they have to adapt a milder attitude. And so actually before 2012, CIFF had never had any official notice or any trouble from the authority. However, this has something to do with the location of Nanjing, because Nanjing is to us in the south of Yangtze River. So that is, in Chinese geography, is considered the south, while Beijing is a political center, China, so things tend to be more sensitive there. But in the year 2012, because of the dramatic political situation in China that year, everything's changed. So somehow I think the bottom line of the guidance or the control of Chinese government control over independent film festival has been raised. So it's more like when the general environment gets much harsher, even when CIF does not have such severe confrontation, or they do not show such confrontational films towards the government, they still suffer from that kind of stricter control. So in 2012, both Beijing and Nanjing Film Festival got the same notice from the government that they have to just cancel their screening for that year. So in a way, Beijing Film Festival, BIFF and CIFF, they share the same kind of value and belief in why they're doing the film festivals, but because of the whole environment, political environment changes in China, they suffer the same consequence.
后窗放映，谢谢。
There have been several rounds of the efforts to create a kind of multi-cinema theater alliance for art house film distribution. Rear Window is a new round of it. And as I said, all those efforts till now have always been a financial failure. But the distribution actions, or the it's entrepreneur action. I will say first, there is a big possibility of capitalization from action which is completely in a circle of a cinephile. They could have a chance to work with a capital in larger scale. They could. They will work with larger capital or not, we don't know. Perhaps they will work like this, perhaps they will refuse it. As I know, for Rear Window, they negotiated, and probably they already refused 3 times in 1 year, because they create Rear Windows only last year. It's just a little more than 1 year. So I suppose that some other people will create some calming possibility of it with strategy, perhaps, I don't know. Some other people will also make it. That's all. I don't know if it's clear. It means that some other people are surely planning to create alternative multi-provincial distribution system only for art house made movies. As I know, there are at least 3 of them.
Can you name some of them?
No, it's commercial secrets.
Okay, good. Well, thank you.
I think there's a hint there to us. Thank you very much, and thank you to the panel, and thank you to all of you for your questions. I think what we're hearing there at the end is, despite all these difficulties, there's always a response. There's a constant flow of actions back and forth. Efforts to constrain, then efforts to find ways around it, and so on. And that's ongoing. So please, hopefully some of you will be coming back in an hour when we'll be showing The Search, which is the last of our 3 screenings of Pema Tseden's films. And he'll be here as well to introduce and take some questions after the film. But in the meantime, please join me in thanking the panel. Thank you very much.